I'm a semiotician, and I work on intermediate semiotics and cognition. So recently I'm exploring alternative ways to materiality, and in this case, of course, electronic literature and net art, and how do they interfere with other forms of human materiality, so to say. So I have chosen the work of this very famous Australian net artist and game designer, Mess Breeze. And she's also a member of this activist group known as the Third Faction, where she explores from a critical perspective and exposes hegemonic narratives and attitudes that generally pervade game environments. So we will see that she merges gender aspects also in her work, no? So because of time limitations, I'm going to look very briefly at her poem Anthropocene, and the collection of V verses in 3D, which is a collaboration with very well-known electronic literature artists, some of them actually present in this panel. The underlying hypothesis, as I have already mentioned, is that net art might actively enhance readers' understanding of key aspects related to critical issues, as well as encourage public engagement with those issues, and in particular with regards to human and non-human actions in the Anthropocene. And in terms of theory and methodology, I use actor network theory and extended human approaches. I'm not going to have time to go into this in great detail in the presentation today, but they're back in my research. So first, with regards to her poem, Anthropocene, I won't go into the detail of analyzing it. You have it down below there on the screen. And in 2011, she published this book, which is called Human Readable Messages, Mesangel, where she talks about this type of code work, which she uses in this poem and also in this book to write. It's a kind of a diary, no? And she has this question on the back cover of the book. What do you get if you stitch together standardized literary conventions? Think. The monumental output of Bill Shakespeare and the staccato pulsions of Emily Dickinson, which coded poetics steeped in digitally drenched communication. So basically, this is what she's trying to do: merge code work and different forms of code work and human languages. And also later in other of her works, in particular,
sorry to interrupt you. Just yes? You forgot to put slide presentation. So we saw all your slides, but we don't have the big one on our face. So if you can put, a presentation.
You don't have the big. I don't understand, Gio. What you don't have?
We don't. We have all your slides. You have to push the presentation and
oh, okay.
You forgot.
Just like that?
Yes, you forgot. Is that
okay?
Just that.
Well, actually, I didn't forget, but it's easier to me to follow track of what's coming next.
Okay, sorry.
But it's no problem. I just improvise. Okay. So, so the poem is of the Anthropocene was published in the Networker Life Journal, and it's an example of Mesangel with bracketing. Okay, so without having time to explore it, you have it here below. Basically, it talks about the effects of Anthropocene, and the term refers, as you all know, to the geological time when humanity is having a huge impact on the environment. It was a term that was coined by chemist Paul Crutzen and marine biologist Eugene Stormer, and And it also emphasizes, to a certain extent, not just human impact on the planet, but also encounters with non-human agents. And with regards to from the semiotic point of view, the kind of interactions and interactions that occur between organisms and their environments. So this is all highlighted in this poem, which I'm not going to explore. And just to clarify that the category of the non-human includes biological forms like animal, plants, microorganisms, or whatever, but also non-biological entities such as machines or artificial intelligence. And you will see that my slides also are providing pictures of V-verses. For example, in this case, the author is Metz Brice herself, and it's two-faced, rat-faced victim Hodder. What is she doing in these V-verses? She's linking humans, animals, inanimate objects, and the poems are like metamorphic. And we have all the time like the Anthropocene as a scene, and this is also emphasized in the poem that I mentioned, the Anthropocene. If you've noticed the term, how she plays with the scenery, the scene, everything that's visualized, no? And as a performative, playable scenario beyond the human, no? And she insists in these scenic dimensions, and this forces also an inquiry into the post-ontology of knowledge and cognition related to the acquisition of alphabetic language in the case of the Mesangel, because she's breaking alphabetic language. And this disruption of the reading experience, which in the V-verses she achieves, because you can click on the different numbers and read not just in one line format, but in different lines, like hypertext, obviously. This also poses epistemological questions in inquiring to the notion of interpretation and explanation, and how many, and if meaning is only univocal or is it multivocal, no? When she explains where she got the idea for Mesangel, and she mentions in this interview for Rhizoma in 2016, she mentions that she wants to, sorry, I just click on the, okay, she wants to open up poetic aspects, okay, and create a kind of dimensional interplay, combining the lyrical and like formalized structures of code, okay. And she uses in the Anthropocene poem, for example, she uses bracketing, and this bracketing functions like semiotic cues that invite diverse meanings. If they break the word, and they multiply the meanings. And she also mentions that this idea originated from her explorations of the work by V.N. Matrix, and their mixing of game aesthetics, anarcho-feminism, and virtual online engagement. So you know that this V.N. Matrix was one of the first cyber feminist groups, and they very strong gender approach, which of course matches our panel today, Gender in Bits. And here is, for example, V-verse 11, power barking, and the author is herself, and she uses Mesangel bracketing the words and multiplying the meanings. And these are other examples, because many V-verses are addressed to the question of women and women power. This one is Her Ribbon Flip by Andrea Phillips and Brice herself. This one is number 10, Artemisianum by Anna Neischer. And you can see the images, also how she's questioning gender stereotypes, and also fusing a human image with animal-like entities, and also other kind of objects, non-human in general. This one is number 12, Bridal Day by Ria Myers. And this one is Bracement by Scott Redberg. Again, playing with metal objects, female characteristics and this ambiguity of between the human and the non-human. In this slide, I just point out that the mechanisms she uses are similar to what Viktor Szlowski in Art as Technique label defamiliarization. If you remember, the purpose was to remove the automatism of perception and cognition and to raise cognitive awareness of how knowledge is produced by means of language. No, it was a technique that was used in early 20th century modernism in art and later in Dada and culture jamming. And it's also in a way related to Sigmund Freud's notion of the uncanny, which of course emerges in many of her V-verses. Okay, so a little bit about code work and how it works, and it seems to me also that code work, the way she introduces code work, is reminiscent of other techniques used to subvert power structures in alphabetic language, and examples are Lewis Carroll, James Joyce, William Burroughs. In particular, I like in the electronic revolution, Burroughs uses the metaphor of language as a virus that spreads by means of institutionalization and hegemonic structures. And the idea behind Burroughs' cut-up was to actually break this kind of order of things in Foucault's words. No, so almost like Messenger is almost like an inoculation of a small portion of pharmacon in the terms of Derrida, you know, which is both a vaccine or an antidote, but also a poison, no, that incorporates political antigens in order to subvert the infection of power. So, and we have a couple of quotations there from Szymanowski and also from John Cayley, who have actually talked about how the digital arts do have a grammar of and there is a politics of code behind the use of code work and other programming structures in electronic literature and net art. As I said, her poems seem to produce a kind of virus-like infection at various levels, and they mobilize poiesis, the aesthetic, the ontological, and the epistemological. And in her poems, the humans meet non-human agents, and there are these kind of interactions that I was talking about, which are signaled by markup language, or in the case of the V-verses by, you know, the numbers that you click and you can organize in the reading structure that you prefer. So this indicates this that nothing pre-exists, that everything is a product of the actants, of the agents performing the semiotic interchange. And this is a kind of a sort of multiverse process ontology, you know. And we have a quotation there from Bruno Latour, who is one of the participants in material theories, and he says that these anthropomorphic expressions must be taken not figuratively but literally, really a matter of defining the human anthropos form and morphos of a non-human and deciding on the limits of the freedom. Latour is one of the first who begins to explore the impact of artifacts in our life, technological machines and so on. No? And we have here a lovely picture of V-verse 1 by Mark Marino. I'm trying to go fast because I don't even realize how much time I have left. But anyway, she calls these story boxes, and I was inspired by the idea of the Pandora box. Of course, in Greek mythology, you open the jar, and all kind of horrible things are liberated. These spirits, and they create great suffering and distress for humans. But basically, like the metaphor that I was using before, the virus, you know, her work is like a virus or a Pandora box that, you know, makes us realize, you know, makes us come to terms with the things that need to be changed, or that we're not aware of. It creates this idea of estrangement, no? And one key aspect also in the case of Pandora box that has to do with gender aspects, of course, is also the question of the responsibility, because also in the Pandora story, as in Eve's story, in the biblical story, it's always the woman who is to blame for not taking responsibility, for failing to do something, no? So the whole thing is, I interpret her verses as a relocation of the blame and responsibility to the reader user, you know, to make the reader user become engaged in global problems that we have today. And of course, you can see, for example, this one by Michael McGuire, you know, where the iconography, the images are resembling not just artificial intelligent robots, but also bioorganisms like the cell, no? So there is this fusion, metamorphic fusion in all her works. This is Curve by Jeremy Hyde. And again, just to mention that the verses can be manipulated, reconfigure, not just the sequence, but also you can scale, you can rotate, you can zoom in. So this opens different fractal levels of recombination, not just with words, but also with the way you can manipulate the verses. So this one, for example, Curve, I use this image because I'm talking about this zooming in, zooming out, but you also have that this one formulation where you get the same feeling of how you can manipulate these works in order to come to awareness of particular aspects of the relationship between the human and the non-human. And also another thing that...
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. I have to be moderator now. You have 1 minute because then there is none. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I think I'm almost finished. I don't know, but almost. Anyway, the way the writing is used in these stories as well, it creates like almost like a phenomenological aspect of contemplation. So I was here referring to Husserl's practice of heuristic reduction, but I don't have time to, in this one, and this is my last slide, so I'm very lucky. In this one, you can see like it's almost like a can opener there, you know, so this mixture of objects, artifacts, human, non-human, animals, and sometimes even ghosts and stuff. And here I have two quotations or two authors whom I find useful. One is Jane Bennett in her work Vibrant Matter, where she's talking about the agency of inanimate things, how things that are apparently like a stone or something, they can rust, for example. They have agency, they can create an impact in the Anthropocene. And also without reading the quotations that you have there, because we don't have time, Lambros Malaforis from Oxford, he's doing cognitive archaeology, and he's a fascinating author in the way he's trying to explore how cognition also emerges from the manipulation of material aspects, no? What he calls material engagement, no? And you have the quotation, there is not simply in the brain, it happens in the interaction between the brain and the things, no? So I think this was my last slide. So thank you very much for your attention.